Hello. Welcome to today's description. The specific description is going to be on the principality of error. Not as long a list as has been before, so we're going to be able to cruise through them in a decent amount of time here. But I'm going to be telling you a story. In the course of the descriptions, I'm going to be telling you a story of something that happened in my mother's side of the family, and it's all going to make sense as we go through this presentation. So, again, talking about the spirit of error. On my mother's side, one of her brothers he has three daughters that look very close to being identical. Many people think they are triplets, except for the obvious age difference in their faces. And all three began to experiment with anorexia. Anorexia, believing that you're having this belief that you're too big or too fat, and so you eat as little as possible. And between the anorexia and the bulimia, my cousins began to become thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. They would tie scarves around their midriff to make it seem like they still had their regular body form, but they weren't. And so my uncle discovered what was happening, and he built a little cabin that was specifically for helping them. This particular cabin was kind of unique because it had no door handle on the inside. It had no handle for the windows on the inside. So that he was able to come in and bring them food, and they were able to go to the restroom. But they were only able to go to the restroom while he was there watching. They were not allowed to puke, do however they want. Now, why were they even in that mess? Well, very simply, they were believing cultic or false teaching. They believed that they were too fat. They believed a way of thinking that just wasn't of God. They'd seen this pamphlet about how to naturally control your weight, and the thing about believing false teaching is that it takes you way outside of God's design. As a result, their mother, aware of what was really happening, had to compromise on what she was being convicted about, and so she knew what was happening to her daughters, and they had made her promise, don't tell dad. So to try to save face with her daughters, she didn't tell her husband. Her husband found out. Just because he's watching her. Why are my daughters not eating as much? They should be eating a little bit more. Why are they saying they're full? Why can I tell in their faces that their faces are starting to get a bit emaciated? What's really going on? They had compromised on convictions. They had believed the principality of error. Into that comes confusion. Now, this part is wild. See if I can add it into the document while I am recording. Da, 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 da. Nope. Bear with me one moment. There's a very specific thing that I discovered. I want to show it to you. Save as confusion origin. And I'm going to add that to the do, 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 do. Where did this go? And okay, the desktop download, got it. Oops, one moment. There we go. And put it in right there. Wait. Where did it go? It's getting there. There we go. When I was looking up the origin of confusion, went into the Webster's dictionary, which I highly recommend, and it gave me this. This is wild. As mentioned in the previous prayer, the compromise of convictions comes into our lives when we are confused. Where does confusion come from? In 1 Corinthians 14:33, we recognize that God is not the author of confusion. That word confusion is the Greek akatasia, is described as instability, a state of disorder, disturbance. Webster's dictionary of 1828 is far more revealing to the reason why confusion exists. He describes confusion as a shameful blending of natures, a shocking crime. Leviticus 18, verse 23, and 20, verse 12. Straight from the Bible, confusion comes from bestiality and incest. Now that ain't wild. So my morally upright uncle had daughters that were stuck on confusion. It was happening because of it had happened in their mind because of incest and bestiality. Straight out of the Bible. Can't make this up. With confusion comes doubt and unbelief. How can you possibly know that you're speaking the right way if you're always doubting what's really happening? You know? So then, how in the world could they be going through doubt and unbelief and also have appropriate thinking? They couldn't. It was so inappropriate. It was so against God. It was a rebellion against what God was commanding. But the highest bit, my cousins, not my uncle, my cousins were being irresponsible. They were not being good stewards of their body because their body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And when Holy Spirit began to convict them of everything that they were doing, and they began to really think about it, realize, okay, we're not doing as God says to do. Um, they repented and they went through a type of mental hospital. It was a Bible counseling camp. They were able to recover. One of those cousins is in the Air Force. Two of them are homemakers, stay-at-home moms, and they look nothing like the near skeletal that they were when they were teenagers. You would not know that their story is that story by looking at them today. So when it comes to, okay, Norm has just given this information, and this information we can now use against the family. Well, you could if you're being rebellious. If you really think that witchcraft is somehow going to work against Christianity, it won't. You will have no effect. You will not have presented anything to my cousins that they have not already faced. it won't work. So the very thing that you're wanting to achieve is belittling, won't work. It's like the comedian said, nothing that you will say to me is not something I've shouted at myself in the mirror hundreds of times before I decided to become a comedian. You cannot say anything they have not already said to themselves. Because here's the thing. The demonic only uses what actually works. So if you get this amazingly bright idea of something, oh, I bet they haven't heard of this. They have. And the greatest part of it is they were able to go into such a level of reconciliation for the entire family. Nothing is a secret, especially when it comes to how much food they are or are not eating. Nothing is a secret. Because out of Ephesians chapter 3, when we expose the works of darkness, we expose the secrets of Satan, and then he can't hide. So, I thank y'all for being here, and I will see you in the next one.